Well, you may recognize Janine Turner as one of People magazine's 50 most beautiful people, or you might be a fan of her acting. There's one role that Janine never planned on taking, the role of a single mother. Let's watch.
Janine Turner is best known for her roles on Northern Exposure, Cliffhanger, General Hospital, and Strong Medicine. But her most gratifying role has been as a single mother. In her new book, Holding Her Head High, Janine writes of how she learned to deal with the challenges of motherhood from 12 courageous single mothers of the past.
Please welcome to the 700 Club, Janine Turner. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we're listening to that list of accomplishments and accolades. Most people would know you for your acting. How did you get into writing?
I just felt God inspired me to write this book. I'm a single mother, not by choice, but sometimes life just happens that way. And as I was researching, I realized that there's such a high percentage of single mothers in America. The 2003 U.S. Census Bureau stated that 43% of mothers in America were single mothers.
43%?
Yes,
Wow.
and that was in 2003. And so it's hovering higher now, and almost to half. And I thought, wow, you know, that's a lot of women. And then I realized the definition's broad. It can mean widowed, divorced, abandoned. I even have a tribute of Abigail Adams to the women who are back at home while their husbands are in Iraq.
When I saw Abigail Adams, I thought Abigail Adams wasn't a single mom.
Exactly.
But you're right, and especially in this day and hour where there's so many military wives who are at home while their husbands are off serving the country.
Yes, I mean Abigail was alone for about 8 years raising her children, and even women that are married with children are relating to the book because the women are just such foremothers. And so I thought, how can we all be inspired? And God led me to these amazing 12 women that on a day where I'm feeling a little bit down, I read their stories again and go, okay, I was inspired to move to New York City after I said, Juliet, they can do it, we can do it too.
Tell me how you decided which women you would choose for the book.
Well, I was just amazed because I always think of single motherhood as sort of a modern day phenomenon. And when I started to open it, yes.
Me too. When I opened your book, I was surprised. I thought it was going to be all contemporary women.
Yes. Yeah, well, that's book two, I guess.
I guess so.
But I thought then I realized, wait a minute, look, they've been doing it for centuries. And I was able to go all the way back to the 3rd century, to Helena Augusta. But they all had great faith. And I read about other women as well that were wonderful single mothers, but they didn't have a foundation of faith. And to me, that's everything.
So that was the common cord that wove itself through the lives of these women?
Yes, it was the faith, and it was also the fact that they all had a flame inside. That I believe God gives us a flame inside. And they all had these sort of terrible situations that they went through, devastating times, and they didn't allow, they had to make a choice. And they were devastated, and some of them just didn't want to go on. They wanted just to run away from and go become a nun and leave their children, but they didn't.
I have days like that, don't you? Convent looks good some days, you know?
And they realized, I'm not going to let anyone or anyone else put this flame that God has given me out. So they all had a sense of survival with the faith in God. And then
maybe even a God purpose in their lives, you know?
Yes, because they all became sort of, I didn't even plan this, but they were the first female professional writer of the Middle Ages, the first woman to take a pilgrimage in the Roman times, the first female printer, the first woman to run for president.
Kind of went against the tide.
Yes, and then they were great stewards of their wounds. They said, okay, I've been through this, how can I help others? So Isabella Graham was a real powerhouse who went out and helped orphans and widows and all kinds of people.
Was there one that stood out in your mind after you went through all of the lives of these women, each so uniquely different? Was there one that you personally really related to?
Well, I kind of say it's like choosing between 12 children. Yeah. How can you have a favorite?
Right.
They all are so unique in their own way. Aunt Clara Brown looked for her child who was sold from her on the auction block for over 30 years.
That's hard to imagine, isn't it?
And she persevered with praise. She always had a great attitude. And Christina Pizan lost everything, all of her, in the Middle Ages. That's amazingly modern, because the playing field of history changes, but the feelings and passions don't.
Exactly.
And she lost everything. All of her furniture was taken from her, but she just became this first female professional writer and just wrote that women weren't being treated correctly, and how could she help the women?
How did writing this and seeing all of these amazing character traits and just depth of personhood in these women affect you?
Well, I was living in Texas raising my daughter, and I want her to have a foundation of faith and family. I left Hollywood actually when she was 2 because I felt she needed that. My agents were very upset with me, but I felt that my daughter and her faith and her extended family was very important. And then when I also had that guilt of being a working single mother, and I was working, but I was not living perhaps my life to what God has planned for my life and how He wants me to reach out. I was sort of hiding. And when I finished Belva Lockwood especially, who just knocked her socks off, she was the first woman to run for president, she took her child everywhere with her and never once thought that her child was going to suffer because she was being all that God made her to be. So I realized that, okay, God's given me a purpose. I can live that purpose, and He will carve a place for my child as well. By not limiting my vision, I'm not limiting her vision. And so when I closed the book, I literally did say to Juliet, let's move to New York City.
And you know, I think that Juliet would be the better, the deeper, the greater vision for experiences like you're talking about, that lots of people don't ever have an opportunity to give to their children. What's next for you? Where do you go from here?
Well, I'm really enjoying reaching out and speaking with single mothers across the country. I just met with some women at the Boys and Girls Club in Philadelphia yesterday. I'm going to meet with women in Washington, D.C. at different centers. So that's really where my heart is. It's interesting because as an actress, and I'm getting ready to go do a movie too next month, but I mean, as an actress, you're always somebody else's mouthpiece. But when God's given me the opportunity through my publishers, which I really appreciate, to write, then maybe I can go and help others and be of service like these women were of service.
So can we look for book 2 with some contemporary
I
counterparts?
hope so, because there's some amazing modern day women. Amazing.
There really are. Well, it's an interesting, fascinating, encouraging, uplifting book. It's called Holding Her Head High, written by our guest Janine Turner, and it is single mothers who championed their children and changed history. And it really is an amazing book. Thank you so much for the work you put into it and the message you bring us. We appreciate it.
Thank
Good
you
to
for
have you
having
here.
me. I appreciate it.
Pat?